Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue Podcast. Very excited for this episode. Here with me, I have Shyra and Marques out of Sacramento, California. Thank you both so much for jumping on the show today.
Thanks for having us, Sam. We're excited to be on.
Yeah, thank
Sure,
you.
for sure. So, what I would like to hear from each of you, just starting off, is just what your childhood was like and what you saw, or maybe what you didn't see that shaped your view of what it means to build wealth.
Yeah, sure. I'll start. Marcus and I, we kind of grew up in the same area, but we didn't meet till we were adults. We went to the same high school for at least a year, but he never noticed that I was there. But later on in life, we were connected. But we had some similarities in our upbringing and also some differences. So I grew up in a single parent home. And so there were some challenges and some struggles growing up in a single parent home. But one thing that I noticed about my mother is that she always kept her checkbook with her. And I know that nowadays most people don't use a checkbook, but before she would make, any purchase, or at the time she was making a purchase, she was always keeping track of all of her expenses. So that is one thing that I remember that has stuck with me, is just to keep record, be accountable. And so I think that made an impact on me. So I guess you can talk a little bit about yours.
Yeah, Samuel, the older I get, the more unique I see that my upbringing was. So my parents been married for 40, going on 40 years. Both grandparents have been married, 60 plus years. All aunts and uncles married. And so I was blessed to grow up in a two-parent household, and that's like all I saw in that respect. Now, with finances and things like that, all of my aunts, uncles, parents had great jobs. No one graduated college. There was no college graduates in my family, but everyone were high-income earners. And so through that lens, I just thought that you worked for everything. That's just what you did. You worked hard, you clocked in, and that's how you made it. And so I never saw any hyper wealth or hyper success, but everyone was really well off.
Like middle class.
Middle class. And so that's kind of shaped my early adult years. It was just like, okay, well, as long as I'm doing that, I'm good. But as I married Shyra, who had a different upbringing, Shyra has more of a I gotta get it mentality. And so I feel like that has rubbed off on me and shaped where we are together now, where we weren't okay with just debt as most Americans are. We weren't okay with just middle class. Like, we wanted to aspire for more. And I feel like Shyra's upbringing, my upbringing, helped to forge our current mentality. And so that's kind of a bit about my background.
Yeah. And I think that over time, your idea, like when it comes to money and wealth building, over time, your ideals change. We've been married for 13 years. We didn't come to our marriage with this mindset that we're going to be building wealth. We just wanted to get married. We were really young. We got married. And so, but I think that that's a great question that you asked, because we both came into the marriage with very different experiences in terms of money and what we were taught about money. I think that one commonality that we had was our faith.
Right.
We attended churches that were down the street and around the corner from each other for the majority of our lives and didn't know. So that was a big part of our story. But yeah, I think over the course of our marriage and experiencing some hardships helped to really shape our ideas when it comes to money.
Definitely. So you mentioned that you two have been together for quite some time, which is awesome. Congrats on that. How, I guess, in your relationship, when you think about when you first met and where you are now, how has your financial philosophy, how has it evolved since then?
Oh,
It's
yes.
changed a lot.
It's changed a lot. So when we got married, I entered the marriage with debt. Marcus came into the marriage with debt, and together we went into more debt. Yes. And so we were very good at that. Getting the typical things, brand new car off the lot, student loan debt, a lot of those typical things. We purchased a condo. And so
Yeah.
Over the years, we racked up some 6-figure debt, and that's what we did. We had to.
On the early stages, Sam, I thought debt was just a thing that is just always the elephant in the room. Like, as long as you manage it,
Right,
I
pay
thought
that minimum payment.
pay the minimum payment, and I thought, we'll be good. This is just what life is going to be. And then as we grew and as we started having kids, I started to realize, like, oh man, for me to get to retirement, or for me to get to a point where I can pay for my daughter's wedding, or for me to get to a point where I can send my kids to college, I can't just do this same thing, because that will not happen with me doing what I'm currently doing. And so I think I had to realize that. Shyra may have realized it before me, but but together we had to realize, like, oh shoot, we can't do it like this. We have to really figure this out. And then we'll get deeper into the story, but there were some things that happened in our life that that polarized it all the more. That, like, hey, you guys got to figure something out, because you're going down a bad path. So
Yeah, so we share our rock bottom story, which is basically some things in our finances just didn't align in the way that we thought that they were going to. There's a period where I had a baby and I left the workforce for a while, and some things, just our finances were just not looking the way that we expected them to be. And so we went through a period of time where we literally did not have enough money to pay our bills. And so that is a really tough spot to be in. But that's where we were for a period of time. And then we strategically made some different choices that helped to turn our situation around. And so it took about 2.5 years so there was a point in time where we started to focus in on debt elimination after we were able to get back on our feet. And so it was a 2.5 year process, but in that 2.5 years, we were able to completely eliminate our 6-figure debt. And then shortly thereafter, we moved into real estate, because that's an interest of ours as well.
Awesome. So can you talk just more about hitting that rock bottom point? And just 2.5 years is a pretty short period of time. So I would just love to hear more about that journey to eliminating all of that debt that had accumulated.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw the ball to you, Marcus.
Yeah.
But I will say that it took 2.5 years for us to pay off our debt once we became serious about it. But it took a little bit of time for us to really get on our feet, so that we had, we needed to increase our income. Maybe you can talk about some of those.
Yeah, Sam. So growing up, how I grew up, like I said, I saw people work. And so my thing was, I can always work myself out of a hole. And early on in our stages of marriage, I was in charge of the finances because I was the man, And so I thought, oh, I got this. I can handle it. And so when Shyra would ask, how much do we have? Do I have enough to go purchase this thing? I was like, oh yeah, we got it. We got more than enough. That was always my answer. And then just because I just didn't want her to know and that we didn't have it, you know what I mean? And so that spiraled out of control. And so I got to a place where I said, I'm going to get 2 full-time jobs because we're in a hole and I don't want Shyra to know about it.
2 full-time
Two
jobs.
full-time
We need to let
jobs.
that marinate for a little bit, because that's 16 hours a day. So that didn't last long. Just
Wow.
Lasted about a week.
You can't do that.
And so I had to let one job go. So that left us with an income that wasn't enough to pay the monthly bills. And we live in California. We live in Sacramento. And we were making $1,300 a month. And that can't buy you coffee in, in California. So that was a really tough time for us. So at that moment, we knew, okay, we got to really make a change. So I had to lay aside that male ego and tell Shyra, we're only making this amount. We don't have enough to make ends meet. So then Shyra kind of said, okay, well, let's figure this thing out together, So that was the biggest step for me, was first admitting to myself, like, man, I'm really screwing this up, I mean, really. And then Shyra was able to help me, and together we put our heads together and figured out, well, what do we need to do to get ourselves out of this? And so one of the strategies was, we need to see what we're spending. We took personal and financial inventory, and we said, man, we're spending X amount on this. Okay, where can we cut that back? Okay, once we've done that, okay, we're as tight as we can get it. We're still not making the ends meet. We need to earn more income. So then Shyra jumped back into the workforce, I got a better job that paid more and also afforded me to work nights so that I can be home with the kids during the day, thus eliminating the $1,000 need for childcare. So when we did that, then we're like good, right? And so we're at a place now where we're it's like, okay, do we want to have lifestyle creep, or do we want to try to do something different now that we're in this better position? So we said, you know what, we should pay off our debt so we don't have to worry about this ever coming back to bite us again.
Mm-hmm.
And so over the next 2 years, we went through that, and we actually paid off all of our debts, starting with the smallest debt first, and then we rolled that over to the largest debt. And when we did that, we were able to like realize goals and celebrate the goals. It's like, okay, we did that. Well, we could do that, you know. And so it just took consistency, and it wasn't always easy because I'll let Shyra speak to some of that, but you know, there were times when we thought
it wasn't always easy, but we had a plan.
Right.
And so when you're working your plan, you don't really feel like you're struggling. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, it's really empowering to know that you're working towards a goal. And right. So ultimately we ended up paying off the condo that we purchased. And so when we celebrated debt freedom, you know, we didn't have a mortgage, we didn't have that student loan debt, we didn't have any credit card debt, and life was really good. And so it's like, what are we going to do next? Mm-hmm. And so that's when real estate became the next chapter of our story. We talk a lot about debt freedom, but one of the things that we learned is that as soon as you pay off your bills, you still got to get up and go to work the next day. Okay. So you're really not living like no one else. You're living like everyone else, but you've reached a certain level on your financial journey that should be celebrated. You should be proud of it. But you really need to start acquiring assets and finding streams of passive income. And so that's what real estate was for us. And that was the next chapter to our journey.
That's awesome. I think it's very interesting just speaking about, you know, the journey, those 2 years. And then at the end, it's like, all right, what's next? You know, we got rid of that, but there has to be more for us to do, more ways for us to grow. So talk about the shift to real estate. I know you two eventually started, you purchased out of state. So I guess first, can you talk about why you decided to go out of state? A lot of times people, you know, you talk to different people, some people are like, oh, you know, you need to live right around the corner from every property you have. You know, how could you buy something?
Or what?
And not, how could you buy something and not, you know, be able to drive by every day? So can you talk about what, and that, you know, I disagree with. I think there's many ways to do that in a responsible way where you're not pulling your hair out every day.
Exactly.
Yeah. So can you talk, just talk more about like what the motivation was for you two going out of state?
Yeah, let me speak to that point, and I'm going to just throw it to Marcus. You do not need to live by your properties. Like, there would be mental anguish for me to drive by a property that I owned every single day, like checking out the cars, taking down license plates, seeing who's coming in, and trying to figure out if they're on the lease or not.
Mow the lawn in 2 days.
You know, like I mean, I guess some people do that, but we don't do that. That's not passive. I mean, that's stressful. Yeah. And so we have found a more efficient way. So I guess you can talk about why we went out of state.
Yeah. So even to go take a couple steps back. So when we were going through the debt payment process or whatever, you're just kind of waiting for the clock to tick away, right? Because you know, I'm going to put X amount towards this every month. And at this day, I'm going to be done, right? So there's really nothing to do in that moment, but just execute and stay consistent. So we said, we're going to take this time to learn and educate ourselves on what's next. So Shyra had the idea. My thinking was, boom, we was going to get hit heavy in the stock market, index funds, ETFs, individual stocks. We just going to do it like that and build wealth that way. Shyra was like, you know what, but people are doing real estate. I'm like, real estate? Oh, that sounds too risky. You know, I don't know. So I kind of wasn't feeling that at first, but then Shyra is very persistent. She would send me videos. I'm like, okay, so they're doing it. Buy and hold. Okay, this seems simple enough. And so we started to kind of develop that hunger for real estate. And we knew, man, we can't do that here in Sacramento because we got our condo in 2009 during the bubble burst, right? So we got it for 89. Was it 89?
It's like around 87,000.
87,000. for a
Wow.
3-bedroom, 3-bath in
Wow.
Sacramento, California. And at this time, so we're talking 9 years later, man, that house was worth $250,000. So we knew we can't do that anymore, right?
It'd
Yeah.
be very difficult
It'd be very
on
difficult.
our
Yeah.
incomes.
So we started studying people who were buying out of state and kind of, learning about how that process worked. And we realized, it doesn't seem as hard as it looks. It doesn't. It's just a certain level of risk tolerance you must have. But if you get your people in place, you'll be fine. And I like to tell people, there's 4 different things that you need to have set up if you're going to be investing out of state. And we did this. We had found a real estate agent. You get your financing, a property manager, and then contractors or subcontractors, general contractors. And a lot of times, if you find one champion out of those 4, they'll find you
They'll
the
connect you.
others. And so we found a great real estate agent.
Phenomenal.
He connected us to the property manager. The property manager connected us to their general contractors that they use. And it has been just very passive for us. You just have to have a certain amount of risk tolerance. And I think we had that.
But I don't want to say that investing in real estate is risky, because like it has stood the test of time. Okay. Like, own something. Okay. There are ways to minimize risks. I mean, that's what a home inspection is for. It's just like you wouldn't want to purchase a car without having someone look at it. At least you shouldn't do it. I don't know if people do that now because we're buying cars off the internet and all of that. But, back in the day, you were buying a car, you would call your local mechanic and be like, check this car out. So, when you're purchasing a home, you have a home inspection. There are, you get, home insurance. I mean, there are some safeguards that will help you to minimize risk. But as Marcus was saying, we couldn't afford to do it here in California.
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Shyra. I wanted to share that the strategy. There are many ways to invest in real estate. The strategy we love is buy and hold. So
we're long-term.
Yeah, we're long-term folks. We have tenants in there. We're essentially landlords. So that's kind of our strategy. Now there are other ways that people do real estate, but that's the way we do it.
Sure, for sure. So can you talk about that that first purchase, like what that experience was like, just being new to investing out of state? What was that like for you?
Yeah. So I think we can talk a little bit about our strategy. Yeah. And we don't talk about this a whole lot. But what we did was we paid off our condo. Okay. So, and over time, the condo had gained a lot of equity. That was our money. Okay. So the house was now worth, close to $250,000. And we were just living up in it. And so we took out a home equity line of credit for the by accessing the equity in the condo. And that is what we use to essentially purchase our first property in cash. So when I say we purchased it in cash, that means there was no expense from us. I didn't have to go into my bank account to pay for a thing. Okay, so we tapped into our own equity. We became our own bank. And that is what we used to purchase our first property. And so our first property was in North Carolina. And a lot of people say, well, why North Carolina? Yeah. And I like to just say, have you seen the movie Coming to America? What was this? Hakeem
when he spun the globe.
Was that his name? Anyway, he spun the globe, yeah, to see where he was going to go to find his queen to be, and they landed on Queens, and so that's where he went. So for us, we had a friend who lived in Tennessee, so we were looking in Tennessee, like we knew someone who lived there. Must be good enough place to live. Right. Then they moved to North Carolina, and then we said, well, let's just start looking at North Carolina. And he lives in North Carolina, says it's a good place. So it wasn't, too scientific, right. But there are certain things that we look for in an area. Right. We don't just invest in any area. We do research on the area. We look at, like employment, We definitely look at the property taxes because some
Yes.
states have incredibly high property taxes. So we want to minimize expenses. We want to invest in a community that is thriving, that is growing, that is, if it's not in a major city, maybe it's in close proximity to a major city so that people might live there and might commute to the major city for work. And so, yeah, so we landed in North Carolina. We used the HELOC strategy to finance it. And you want to share a little bit more?
Yeah, I think looking back on it, there were some pluses that we saw in financing the property, just buying it out cash. We thought that there was going to be maybe a little more negotiating power with being able to
Oh,
not,
yeah.
not have to finance, and maybe we can kind of talk them down. And that we did experience that. We did get the house a little below asking. Some individuals may have, opted to take a portion of the HELOC and finance the rest, which is what we did for our second property. Before our first property, we were getting our feet wet, and we thought, let's just buy this thing
Yeah.
outright cash.
Mhm.
But I think the key is to make sure that your calculations are right and that you're getting a return, because the goal is to not get into more debt. And while this is debt, if you can get the numbers so that your tenant is paying you back and you're cash flowing after that.
You have to cash flow.
Exactly. And so I think that was key for us, was just understanding how to calculate our return on investment, how to find a good, investment, and something that would cash flow in the end and would pay for itself. And so we were able to do that. And once we were able to do that, we would just pull the trigger, Sam, and was like, let's just do this. Let's just do it.
Right. And it's really like when you are dealing with cash, like you don't have, there's not a lot of paperwork. We signed like 2
Yeah.
papers at a
Yeah.
law office.
Yeah.
And that, so the transaction is very simple. I think what Marcus was sharing earlier is key, that you have to find a good real estate agent, someone that is just hungry. They have to be just as hungry as you,
Right.
because Marcus interviewed a lot of different real estate agents. Some folks were not returning his calls. They were questioning him. They didn't want to take him seriously. Who was his brother calling me from another state? Maybe some folks could be salty to investors that are coming into their state, so it took some time to find the right person.
Right.
And when we found the right person, it made the process a lot easier. He would walk through properties and have us on a video call and take us through each of the rooms, because we couldn't physically be there. And so just kind of backtracking, building your team is so important. And then the experience is really a positive
It was a
experience.
very positive experience.
Awesome. What type of questions? So a lot of people that's something they think about, just real estate agents. How do I know I'm with the right one? Like, what are, I guess, a couple of questions that you ask just to kind of get a feel of if this person is right for what it is you're looking for?
Right. I'll take piece of it. But before our advice, before you start calling up real estate agents, is make sure you got your stuff together.
Yeah.
Okay. When you have your stuff together, then you can see if they got their stuff together.
Right.
And when I say make sure you got your stuff together, that means you need to have some money. Look, if you don't have no money, then people are not going to want to deal with you. So having money can look at certain ways. It could look like a pre-qualification letter for a home loan. So if you know that you have to finance a property, you go apply for that financing. Don't just be calling people and wasting people's time. Like, get your stuff together. Okay, get your financing, get your HELOC or whatever. If you're going to be investing with a sibling, or you got a couple of folks, y'all just trying it out. Get your money together, get your financing together, and then you can move to the next step, which is talking to a real estate agent or realtor.
Yeah, and Sam, I'm big on energy, and Shyra has helped me develop, strengthen that muscle a little bit. But so just speaking, like, you're kind of cold calling, right? Real estate agents. You may see a house. Let's say you're looking on Zillow. You may see a house and you see that list of agents there on the side. And you're like, okay, let me call one of these guys, just get some more information. I could tell almost immediately, this person's going to work, or this person, I don't know. They kind of, and so I'm big on just the initial conversation. Tell me a little bit about the house. Have you ever worked with an investor out of state?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kind of questions you want to ask, and just get a vibe from them. I spoke to one individual, Shyra kind of alluded to a little bit of it, but they kind of didn't take me serious. Like, oh, so you want to buy a house? First of all, you're an African American in your 30s. and you want to buy a house from another state, it's kind of like, huh? You know, like I didn't like that vibe. I didn't like the energy I was getting.
I definitely didn't like it. I would be getting mad.
Yeah. So you want someone that's gonna, you want someone that's gonna take you serious and that's really there to answer your questions and not answering them, you know, with a critical eye. You know, I felt like I was being interviewed. There's no like, I'm hiring you. You know what I mean? So I know there's some things you need to know as a real estate agent, but really I'm the one doing the I should be asking the bulk of the questions. And so you just want to get a vibe from your real estate agent. And when we finally found the correct one, I just knew it immediately. I said, oh, this guy right here, he's going to work, you know? So you just want to get someone who's investor friendly, especially in dealing with someone out of state. Are they willing to go the extra mile? Because there's going to be a lot of extra miles needed to go. So I think those are some questions you want to make sure you're asking, especially if you're going to be investing out of state.
For sure, for sure. If you don't mind me asking, what part of North Carolina are your properties in?
It's in Greensboro.
Greensboro, okay.
Yeah,
cool,
Greensboro.
cool.
Yeah.
So I think it's the first time we've had someone on the show with properties in North Carolina. Maybe we've had some before, but not many. So I don't think Greensboro. So can you tell us more about like the city? And I know you knew someone there, but I guess what you saw, what are some of the indicators that was like, you know what, I think this is a good place for us to start.
Ooh, why Greensboro? That's a great question. We had a friend who lived in Charlotte. So we started, you know, Charlotte is a growing city. Like Charlotte is lit. Okay. I guess for North Carolina standards. So we started looking in Charlotte and we couldn't afford it. You know, we were still on a budget. We couldn't afford it. So we started looking at surrounding cities. And so Greensboro was the surrounding cities. I believe there's a university there.
Many universities.
Yeah, in the area. It just looked like a decent place to raise a family. Some folks might live there and commute to other places, but
about an hour and some change outside of
Charlotte. Yeah.
So we felt it was good proximity too.
Yeah, and so
I think also just it was the third largest city in North Carolina. So the population was there, and we had heard rumblings that, you know, there would be more development. It's a really growing city. So that played a factor, I believe. I'm not sure if there's an Air Force base there, but sometimes we like to find areas that have, you know, military families and, you know, hospitals. And so it checked a lot of those boxes.
Yeah. You just a thriving economy.
Thriving economy.
Not in the middle of nowhere, you know, but it's still it's not a major city, but it's near a major city. Yeah.
So those are some of the pluses about it. And just, we went after purchasing the house. So the first time we went to check out the city, we had already bought the house, which is, you know, that's, some people may not be comfortable with that, but we were. But when we got there, the vibe was lovely. Like I really love that city. It's so like the whole Southern hospitality. It's a real
sweet
thing.
Tea. Ooh, the sweet tea is so sweet. You know, we're not used to that out here.
Right. It's a real thing. So we just got good vibes once we got there. And so that made us say, well, house number 2, we got to do it. We got to do it in Greensboro.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, and there are other markets, you know, there are other markets if you're looking to get into that are
maybe a little more affordable.
More affordable, you know. So I mean, you also want to keep your budget in mind too. You want to get the best for your dollar. But our experiences there have been really positive. We've gone on to share our story. We keep in contact with our real estate agent, and he has received several referrals.
I feel like we got them a lot of business.
Yes, we got them a lot of business. Yeah. So other people have gone through our realtor after hearing our story, and that's always a positive thing to hear too.
Definitely. That's awesome. And was that first purchase, was it a single family home, multifamily? What were, I guess, some of those details on it?
Yeah, Sam. So we were definitely looking at single family home. That home was a 3-bed, 1.5 bath. And so that, we feel like that's a good little pocket right there, because you'll have, you know, usually families, and most of the time they're going to want at least two bathrooms. So our second purchase was a 3-bed, 1 bath. And we had a bit of a time getting a tenant in there. Just, honestly, I think it was because of that one bath or that half bath. So,
right. In that area though, I think it's it's kind of common that a lot of the houses
Mhm.
had one bathroom.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the first house is 3 bed, 1.5. And then the other thing is our first house was actually a flip. And
Yes.
so not that you need to
Yes.
buy a flip. It's a flip. So
And not a flip that we did, a
not a flip.
turnkey.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
turnkey, like move in ready.
Mhm.
And I think that for us, Marcus is more of a risk taker and I'm not. And I think that
That was a
me came into that
yeah.
and that we're not really a risk taker. So the house looked really, I mean, it was wonderful. It rented like in like 2 weeks. Like it really didn't take very much time to rent. But that's something to consider too, because sometimes you're going to pay a little bit more if you're purchasing a flip. But the aesthetics are there and many times they're easy to rent.
Yeah. And then Shyra, to speak to that, you have to consider doing a flip 3,000 miles away would have been some unnecessary stress that we didn't really want to go into. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, people don't know us like that. Like we didn't have those relationships.
Yeah.
So we purchased a house that was flipped. That was a flip.
Definitely. How recently was that?
Yeah, that was in 2018.
March of 2018.
Yes, we purchased 2 properties in 2018.
Mm-hmm. Got you. So what I like about this is that you purchased the property, you did all your due diligence, and all of this before you even step foot in the city. And I think it's powerful, and it's similar. I have one property in Ohio, and it was a similar thing. It was a flip, so it was turnkey ready. I did everything remotely, and it's just cool to talk to people who have done something similar because everyone may think you're crazy, but the thing is with technology, with the right team, you could really do exactly the same thing you would do if you were in the city. Like I had visited, but by the time there's a property that I wanted, I wasn't there. So I think it's powerful just to know how thorough you two were. You know, you knew your criteria, you knew someone there, you knew enough to take the next step and enough to go forward. So I think that's very, very powerful. And it just shows like it's possible. You know, a lot of us live in expensive coastal markets. We're not able to buy in our markets as investors, maybe, you know, as a primary residence, house hack and so forth. But, you know, it's harder to buy something in large cities that you don't plan to tenant occupy at all. I think there's a big opportunity going out of state, going to other markets, other cities. I mean, there are plenty of other places where people want to live, you know? So I think it's great that you two were able to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's part of it was just shaking off that, I don't want to keep going back to, you know, risk tolerance, but shaking off that fear and really the thing about us is we knew no one else who had done it. And so that's why I love platforms like this, because we're kind of uncovering that fear factor of, I don't know anyone who's done it. Well, here are individuals who have. So I think that is very important, just to have these type of conversations.
Right. And the information is out there. I mean, certainly you could go through a course, you can go through coaching. Those types of things will help generally to expedite your progress. But the information is really out there to really help people to take the steps necessary to acquire rental properties. A lot of times people think like, somewhat we have had friends say like, oh my gosh, how could you do that? You bought the property, you didn't see it first? I'm like, it's not really a big, I mean, I don't know. We, you know, for us, this is not a big deal. I mean, just like you said, the technology is there.
Yes.
The only thing, I mean, I don't know. Just put your fear to the side if it's something that you really want to do and just go for it. And for a lot of people, taking the first step is actually applying for the financing. Get the financing. A lot of times you just want to read, you want to plan, you know, but at some point you have to act. And so that's what action looks like for a lot of investors that are just getting started.
For sure. So you mentioned that you made a second purchase within that same year, 2018. Can you talk to us more about that? It sounds like once you got a taste, you're like, we gotta do this again.
Man, Sam, when I tell you, I have been patiently waiting and itching for the third one.
Oh my goodness.
But going from the first one to the second one was like, we just wanted it. We wanted to do it again. And we knew we wanted to purchase 2 that year. So full disclosure, our home equity line of credit was for about $125K. So we bought the first house for about $100,000. It might have been 103, 104, somewhere around there. And so we knew, oh, okay. And there's a strategy out there called the BRRRR strategy, where you, Shall I help me out?
I didn't know you was gonna say this.
Where you buy the property,
you rehab,
something
you
that's
refinance. You
so you're
know,
buying something that's undervalued. You're buying something with equity already. You're repairing the house. You refinance the house, so you're taking your money out. And so what you so what you're able to do is you're able to just go into the next one, right? Well, with us, risk tolerance, once again, Shyra was like, I want something that's already,
moving
ready.
I don't have time for that. I still have a job. I got 2 kids.
Right. So there was no equity that we could just be like, cool, now we could just run and get the next one. Right. So it took us about 6 months. And so we said, well, we have enough to finance the next one. We don't have enough to buy it out cash, but we still have enough money left over to finance the next one. So that
we might have put a little bit of our
we might have put
it as well.
But we said for house number 2, let's go ahead and finance it, conventional loan. We paid 20% down. Bought a house that was very similar to the first one, almost identical, like style and everything, and neighborhood type. And so, that one was more of a, I really wanted to do it, and Shyra was like, just go ahead and do it. That's what you want to do, And so I just took the same blueprint as we laid out for our first transaction and just applied it to this one.
Right.
And it just, everything kind of worked out almost identically.
Right. And have your criteria for a house. Like, I don't like a whole bunch of stairs. I don't need nobody falling.
You don't like decks.
We don't like a lot of people in the South, decks are big, but I'm like, you ain't going to get no deck in one of my houses because, I'm not repairing no deck because it would rot and all that. I'm just not, so just have your criteria, for what you want to look for. And so we have our criteria. And so.
Yeah, so it worked out well for us.
You already had your team in place. You already had your property manager. You already have the realtor who's happy to do business with you yet a second time.
Right.
And so.
Yeah, it was a great experience. So now we've been stacking and getting ready for the third house. Now we're going to try our hand in a different area this time. But we're excited, and we've kind of came up with a strategy that we can do this more,
repeat
put it on repeat.
And over time, what real estate has become for us is a self-sustaining business, in that we can use profit from our initial properties to help fund the purchase of other properties. And so we can take money from our 9-to-5 jobs and invest in the market. So we do both. We're not just all one thing. We don't recommend anyone do that. So yeah.
Definitely. So you mentioned you were looking in a different area. Where are you looking for the next opportunity?
You see me shaking my head. Go ahead, Marques.
Montgomery, Alabama.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't.
You should
I don't.
immediately.
Shyra likes, she's like, well, why not just look where we've been looking, but I've been doing a lot of research on Montgomery, and it seems like there's some great opportunities there.
I don't know.
And proof that there's great opportunities there is the lack of homes. Investors are swooping in and grabbing a lot of good properties. So the similar style property that we got in North Carolina for around 100 to 105,000, we can get that same quality of home in Montgomery for around 40 to 50,000. And so people are swooping in.
I don't know, but see, you have to weigh certain things. This is an ongoing conversation
we letting you
in
guys
our house, and now we're having it on the air. But the house that we bought in Greensboro, they have appreciated. It's like, my goodness. Yes. Like, I don't know if we're going to see that type of appreciation. Yeah. And we're doing it for the long term. So I don't know. So. And
I think for me, Sam, I'm more about.
He's looking for the return.
I'm more about the return.
The
appreciation,
monthly cash flow.
That could come and go. It's just like pixie dust to me. Like, that's great. That's great icing, but I'm about the cake. You know what I mean? So I'm about the return. And if my return's good, I'm good, so that's kind of.
Definitely. So
that's
it's
important.
Been,
that's important.
Definitely. So it's been about 2 years. What are some challenges that you say you experienced over the last couple of years? Perhaps things that you didn't expect or factor in. Just things that happened over the past 2 years that you had to work through.
As far as real estate?
As far as real estate, yeah.
Yeah, so we have an excellent property manager. There have been things that have come up with our properties, um, repairs, you know,
Break in, AC repair,
yeah, just different
different
things.
things.
But we're notified about them and can provide guidance on how to approach it. But we have a really great property manager, and we've been able to do it with very little stress.
Yeah.
We don't stress about the properties. We don't worry about them. We don't think about them every day. I do consider us to be conservative investors. We are pretty conservative. I mean, we could have equally have taken the HELOC and probably purchased several homes, you know, but we're really conservative. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't think we've had any huge issues just because of just because we have property management in place.
Yeah.
Right.
And knock on wood, you know, we haven't experienced any issues with the pandemic or anything. Our tenants have been able to continue, you know, to pay rent. So that has been
That's been a
awesome.
blessing.
Yeah. So, you know, fingers crossed on that. But
But I'm not worried about
I'm
it.
not worried
And
about it.
I'm not worried about it because the path that we've taken is that one of our properties, the first property that we purchased, is completely paid off. Um, so because that house is paid off, the cash flow, I mean, the cash flow is there.
Right.
The reserves are there. If one person doesn't pay, then hopefully the other person can pay. If they both don't pay, then we're still going to be okay.
Yeah.
I hope they're not listening. But we'll be okay. And I think part of that is because we're really thoughtful in the way that we approach real estate. We're not just out there grabbing doors just to say that we have them or to floss, or, you know, we're thoughtful. We know that these are real families that
Right.
live in these properties. And it's an honor, you know, to own homes that families can stay and can raise their family there and can grow into those properties. So yeah, I think the stress has been kind of low, but the pandemic, you know, so far things have been going good and we're thankful for that.
That's good. That's good. And I'm really glad that you all just mentioned that, because there's a fear. There's a fear people have, but what people sometimes seem to forget is that when you do your homework, when you prepare, when you have your team together, it reduces the fear. It reduces the likelihood that something crazy will happen if you just do your homework and prepare. So I really want to encourage everyone listening. Maybe you're thinking about investing out of state. Maybe you live in an expensive market. It's possible. You can invest out of state if that's what you choose to do. It's just a matter of doing your homework, being prepared, and just going for it. So I think you two are a great example of that. You know, you weren't gurus. You didn't come from, like, you know, a background of real estate moguls or anything. You're two people who did what you had to do to eliminate all your debt and then move to the next stage of investing. So, you know, I really want people to take that home.
Absolutely. Like, don't be afraid of it. Like, you can do it. Like, we went to church on Sunday morning and that evening went to the airport, didn't tell nobody, flew to North Carolina, signed the papers, walked around the house, thanked the Lord, got back on the plane, came back to California and went to work the next day. Like it was nothing, you know? So, I don't know. But at the same time, you know, you have to really think about if real estate is what you want to do. If you want to invest in real estate, you know, you could do that through the market, through REITs. So there are other ways that you can invest in real estate without having to worry about the brick and mortar part of it. But it has been really wonderful for us. We've had a wonderful experience, and we have a long-term plan to continue growing our wealth through real estate.
For sure. What are some tips you would give to someone who's in a similar position, who just is ready to invest, wants to go out of state, or wants to invest in general? So it could be like mindset, it could be more practical things, just a couple of things that come to mind for each of you.
I think for me, like you touched on it, the first thing is mindset. And that may look like, I like to say, curate your what you feed yourself to where it's things that are where you want to be, right? So you may not know anyone who's ever invested in real estate. Well, the first thing you need to do is start consuming that type of information. I think that is important. And that's something that me and Shyra did. We started going on YouTube and checking out different investors and bigger pockets and platforms like yours, Sam, curate your Instagram feed to where that's what you're seeing, because that, as long as you continue to see that, you will aspire for that and know that it's possible. So I think mindset is one. Two, like Shyra said, determine how you're going to finance this house. Everybody wants to be an investor. Everybody wants to do. How are you going to finance it? Get that solidified. Determine what type of real estate investor you're going to be. Are you going to be a flipper? Are you going to do wholesaling? Are you going to invest in REITs, via the stock market? Are you going to be a buy and hold landlord? Are you going to invest out of state? So determine what you're going to do and how you're going to, invest. I think that's key. Shire.
Yeah, I remember one thing that we used to do before we were in a position to actually acquire a property. We would just go on like Zillow. We would look for a house that we would buy if we had the money.
This is good.
And we would literally work out the numbers. We would, okay, how much would I put down? If I put this much down, how much would the mortgage be? How much rent could I get?
Expenses.
I would look at like the fair market rental rates for that area. How much could I get in rent? What would my electricity be? What would the water be? We would start running these calculations and on properties that we weren't in a position to buy, so that when we became in a position to where we could buy, we already knew what a good deal looked like, because we had practiced it. We practiced it over and over. We talked through these different situations, different scenarios. I'm a little leery of some of the calculators online that be asking for all of the business, like where's this property located? Like
send us some pictures of the
send
property.
us a picture of the property. I'm a little leery because there are some calculators out there that you can use online, but you get figure it out. Just go in Excel, get a sheet of paper, work through some of those numbers. When you are in a position to buy and you find a deal, don't be putting all the business out on the internet. I'm looking at, because somebody else will scoop it up. That's what I'm trying to say. But basically, we practice so that we could spot a good deal. So there are things that you can do to prepare yourself to take action when you're there. So that's one thing that we did.
I think it's important. Don't have analysis paralysis. Don't get so caught up in the studying and researching and all those great things that we just told you a few seconds ago. Don't get so caught up in those that you don't act. I think that's key too, because a lot of times we just get lost in the studying and then we just go do something else. It's like, but wait, you never did it. So I think it is important to just go out there and just.
If it's what you want
really
to do,
what you
no
wanna
one's
do.
pressuring you to
Right.
do it,
Yeah.
because there are plenty of ways to make money. Okay. There's 3 avenues by which folks generate wealth. That's real estate, that's through business, and through the market. So, pick your
one and run
poison.
with it. Yeah.
For sure. I'm not sure how old your children are, but how much do they know about what's going on, about what you two are doing?
Well, our son Cameron, he's 7, and our daughter Taylor is going to be 6 here in a couple months. And man, we talk about this, Sam. It's funny. We literally talk about finance, real estate, all these great things all the time. Shire almost says we talk about it too much, but it's regular conversation for us. So our kids are hearing it. Our kids hear us. They hear us recording this podcast with you, and so it's become something that is talked about at the dinner table, just like our counterparts have talked about this at the dinner table for centuries. So this is something we want to make regular for them. In fact, when we purchased our second house, we did it remote.
You signed the papers.
Signed the papers remote. And so we took our kids to experience that.
Where we at?
We were at like a UPS with a notary. And so our kids were able to experience like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to purchase our second house and we're going to sign the papers. And they were there to share that experience with us. So
and don't be running through the store.
Right. So we think it's just important just to have them, just if nothing else, because they're so young, just be flies on the wall and see what we're doing. And as they age, we're starting to give them more formal financial training. But
right, this needs to be normal. It shouldn't be like, ooh, you got a couple properties. This is a great thing. Like this is just this is normal. This is just what we do.
Yeah.
And we go about and do the other things that are a part of our lives that we enjoy as well. So, yeah, I think they're soaking it in. They're little sponges when they're young.
Yeah.
Definitely. I guess what is one or two tips you would give to someone who is just in a mountain of debt, consumer debt, the whole nine? What is like one or two things you would say for them to do today? Like if whenever they listen to this podcast and they just want to start working towards changing that, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, paying off your debt for us has really been essential. It really unlocked the door for
Yes.
us to pursue the things that we really wanted to pursue. For a lot of people, debt is a really big barrier. Debt is a stress. And so we made it a point to pay it off. A simple thing that someone can do if they want to get serious about paying off their debt, the first thing they need to do, they need to figure out how much debt they have. We do coach, and it is surprising the number of people who actually don't know how much debt they actually have. So they need to sit down and just get it, just look at it. What are you dealing with? Is this a hill in the park, or is this an Everest? We need to figure that out. So you need to get a good idea of where you are, to really figure out where you're going to go and the strategies that you'll need to implement to get there. So just look at it, calculate the total amount of debt that you owe. And then you need to take a look at, we say that folks need to do a cash flow statement. So we don't go right to, you need a budget. You need a cash flow statement, which basically looks at how much is coming in and what's going out. So you're going to look at your monthly income. For some folks, it'll vary. For some folks, it's pretty consistent. And then look at your spending habits. So just go back maybe for the last 30 days and look at every single transaction. So that may require you logging into your bank, pulling up a bank statement, look at every single one. And I want you to categorize them. Okay. So each purchase or each item that went out of your bank account, if it was a need, put an N by it. If it was a want, put a W by it. Okay. And you just want to get an idea of what you're spending your money on, because a lot of times you'll blow a couple $100 like nothing, so look at how you're spending your money. What new awareness do you have after looking at it? What things are you happy about what habits do you want to continue? What habits do you want to stop? And then look at your surplus, so at the end, so look at your income, look at your needs, and look at how much money you have left over at the end of every month. So that's your surplus. And there are a couple things you can do with your surplus. You could spend it. A lot of people spend it. You can invest it. You can save it. You can use it to reduce debt. So look at what you have for surplus. Make sure that your surplus aren't going to a bunch of wants, and put a line item, in your budget to do things such as reduce your debt. So make it its own line item. That's something you can do. A good starting point.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Awesome. So as I was preparing for this interview, I was just looking you two up, and you two have a whole lot of great things going on. I don't want to miss anything. I know there's like the YouTube channel, the courses. So could you two spend some time just speaking about the different resources and products and services you have that to help people?
Absolutely. So we paid off our debt, and then we organically started our YouTube channel. It was literally just like on a whim. And then it kind of blossomed to where we are now, where we have over 100 videos on YouTube. We're talking about everything from early retirement to real estate to, how we paid off our debt, and just inspiration and information. So we have those available on our YouTube channel, Black, Married, and Debt Free. And then we started a podcast that is Black, Married, and Debt Free podcast, where we get to sit down with some awesome people that are doing some great things in the area of finance, entrepreneurship, real estate. And so, check us out there. And so we wanted to do a deep dive into our strategy. We get a lot of questions about how we paid off our debt, and we outline a lot of that in those things, YouTube and podcasts, but we wanted to dig deeper. So we created a masterclass that's available. It's called Get Out of Debt and Start Building Wealth. And we really went into the strategies we use to come out of a debt and that we're currently using to build wealth. So you can access that by going to our Instagram and simply clicking the link in our description, and you can access our masterclass along with all of the other things that I laid out and all the things we have going on.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this was a powerful interview. I'm excited. I'm inspired, I'm just thinking back to the beginning of the interview, and you mentioned that, you one day you just found yourself just in a pile of debt, so it just, things just kind of got out of hand. But, instead of just sitting in it and just, letting it continue to build, made a proactive decision. You know what? Let's change course.
Right.
Let's move forward. Let's figure out how to get ourselves out of this. And a couple of years later, you did, and then move to the next phase of your business, next phase of investing, and so forth. So I think it's extremely inspiring, and I know a lot of people can relate. Many people may be in that situation, but when they see you two, they know there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a better side after this, and all it takes is for you to change your behavior, make a proactive decision to, get out of debt if that's holding you back, to invest out of state if fear is holding you back. You have two people here who've done it. And so I'm just so appreciative of you two for coming on the podcast. Is there anything you want to leave with the listeners?
Well, Sam, we just want to thank you for having us both on. We appreciate it being on this platform. And I think you said it in a nutshell. We're just two regular people who, wanted to make a change, and we're just enjoying the journey together and learning as we go, and the sky's the limit, So if anyone else wants to do that, hopefully we are a good example of how, anyone can do anything like this. So thank you for this opportunity.
For sure. Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. Look forward to hearing from you all soon.